How you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for allowing me the honor of helping you celebrate and commemorate your becoming 80 years old in your life. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, won't you tell me your name and where you're from?
Okay, my name is Gwen Murrell. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana. From there, my family moved us to Long Beach, California. And then in my later years, I moved here to Phoenix, Arizona, where I currently reside.
All right, such an amazing trek there. And you and I share the same birthplace.
Yes.
New Orleans, Louisiana, although you were born in a much rural area than I was.
And a few years earlier. A lot of years earlier.
And so what town were you born in Louisiana?
I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana at Charity Hospital.
Okay, very familiar with Charity, but you later moved to another part of Louisiana.
Right, later, when I was about 4 or 5, we moved what we call across the river to a little country town called Ama, Ama, Louisiana.
Ama, Louisiana. Mm-hmm. Now, I've never heard of Ama, Louisiana, but I'm definitely going to do my research on that. It doesn't sound like it's too far from New Orleans.
No, it isn't too far. It's across the river again from Kenner, Louisiana, which is where the New Orleans airport is currently located.
Okay, so New Orleans, that's where you were born. Tell me about your early life and what was it like? I know you were very young when you left there, but from what you can remember and what you learned later about where you grew up.
Okay, yeah. When I was born in New Orleans, my family lived in the St. Bernard projects on Gibson Street. And at that time, the projects were fairly new. So they were clean. We had all good neighbors. I had friends that played outside. I was lived with my mom and dad, sister and brothers. And it was a good place to grow up.
Now, you grew up, for those of us who are from New Orleans, later life, we know about the many projects that were there. And I'll tell you, during my time coming up, they weren't as pristine and beautiful as you described. Won't you tell me about that from what you can remember?
Yeah, and later, you're right. And when I was there, like I said, they were fairly new and they were clean, and a lot of families, it was segregated, so it was all black families that lived in the St. Bernard projects where I lived. My grandmother lived in Calliope projects.
All right.
Mm-hmm. My grandmother lived in, I had a grandma who lived in Calliope projects, so we lived in public housing, I guess it's called. And so later years, actually after we moved out, the projects became very dangerous and bad place to live. I hear, fortunately, I did not get to experience that. That happened much later, and then now, and even after Katrina, they've actually destroyed all the projects and they're all gone now.
Yeah, that process actually started a little bit before Katrina, but you're right. All those projects are gone. They replaced them with individual housing. Some of them are still called the project names where the site is, but they're like individual homes now. Yeah, so you were 5 years old when your family decided to head west.
Well, when we left New Orleans and went to Ama, we left Ama. We were there in the little country town for about another 5-6 years. And in 1958, we moved from out of Louisiana to Long Beach, California.
And how old were you then?
I was in junior high school, so I was like 13, 14 years old.
Okay, so
Yeah.
from about 5 years old to your teenage years, you lived in this small town that you described as, just a community, a family. Why don't you talk about that in your experience?
Sure. And that, my I don't know how many generations lived in that little country town, but my great-grandmother was there, and all of her children were there, which was my grandmother, and then their children were there, and all of their children. So it was, all those people, all those adults were my parents as well. We all had my cousins. No matter whose house we were at, it was like it was a parent. So really, I did grow up in a real village. There was a lot of family events, a lot of cooking gumbo, eating, celebrating, church on Sunday. The preacher would come over to the house on Sundays and have the Sunday dinner occasionally. And during the week, the preacher would come and collect insurance. What is it, like 10 cents for the...
That was his day job, right?
Right,
okay.
right. With the insurance man, collect the insurance money. But it was a great family experience for me. My extended family, I grew up with all my cousins and my aunts. So I had a lot of, surrounded with a lot of love, a lot of family, a lot of fun.
Oh, that must have been amazing. I grew up in kind of the years I grew up, there were remnants of that. Still some ties there with that, but not as rich as you described. So it's amazing to talk to someone who lived that in, the 50s, late 40s and 50s. I can imagine what kind of life it is. So tell me, from what you can remember, you're 13 years old, so you're very conscious about your surroundings and things like that. As a young girl in the late 50s or mid 50s, if you will, living in rural Louisiana, what was the dynamic like for you in terms of like race relations and things like that?
Again, being a young person, I was aware of the segregation, but I really didn't experience any racism per se in Louisiana, because we lived in our own community with our family, so it was a lot of support around me. I can tell you a story about when I first realized that I knew we were segregated, but my first experience is that I was at home one afternoon with my family, and this young white kid came to the house, and he had been fishing. He caught some fish. And he approached my great-grandmother, and he said, "Hey, Sarah, I bought some fish. You want to buy some fish?" And that just hit me to my core, because this was my great-grandmother. Nobody ever calls her by that name. It's always Miss Sarah, Grandma, that kind of thing. But the way he said it, it was like, that was very insulting, very condescending.
Very disrespectful.
Very disrespectful, and that was my first experience of racism.
And I could imagine your jaw dropping, because in a family dynamic, especially in Louisiana, the kids respected the adults.
Exactly,
right? Yeah.
Exactly.
So to have this, even though put it in the context of the times, to see this kid do that.
Totally disrespectful. And he was a young kid, 15, 16, and she was elderly by that time.
Yeah.
And so and none of us would ever speak to her in that manner. So that was, as I can recall, that was really my only experience of racism while I was in Louisiana. Well, when I got to California, I really found out what racism really was.
And you were older too, so you were more conscious of things, being out there on your own, doing things.
Yeah, well, when I was in Louisiana, I didn't have to experience it because I wasn't out anywhere without my family, so I didn't have to interact with anybody in that way.
You had a community, like you said, you had your own village, so you were pretty isolated from the outer things, which I'm assuming a lot of Black people who were able to do that, that's the reason why. I was thinking maybe from the adults, you heard some rumblings of things from adults and things like that, but again, you weren't an isolated
I did.
community.
Of course, there was always that talk that, people would go work. Some of the people would work in a white person's home, and you come by and you hear stories about that kind of thing. Another thing I heard adults rumbling, it was some young man, again, this is vague for me now, but because I was very young, was in a court. There was a court case where this young black person was accused of doing something, and the whole community was supporting this black man, and they would talk about this every day. And of course, again, it was just like today. He didn't do anything, but they had him on trial, and I just remember rumblings and talkings about that and how that was injustice again way back then.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. You were very young back then. Now, the day come where your family decide to head west. What do you remember of your parents preparing and talking about that, and the reasons why they went west?
Okay, my mom's sister had already moved to California. My auntie, we called her T, and she was already in California. And they also, my dad had some childhood friends who also had moved to Long Beach. So my parents got pressure from the friends and from my aunt, come on out to Long Beach, come on out to California, there's better opportunities here, you can live well here, come to California. So they were sort of not sure if they really wanted to do this. So my mom went to California first, just to check things out, just by herself. And she, I think she got a job or whatever. She checked things out, and she says, "Yeah, I think we want to stay here." So so we came out in waves. So then I think my dad came next, and then one of my sisters came, and then I think the last ones to go to California after my family had been established there was me and my brother and my little niece, and we all went out to California with fried chicken on a Greyhound bus.
That's beautiful. Wow.
Yeah, that was that. And my grandmother and my older sister put us on because my parents were already in Long Beach. So my grandmother and my older sister Pat put us on the Greyhound bus with our basket of fried chicken, and that was our movement to Long Beach.
So you had that bus smoking up with that chicken. That aroma was going.
Well, what happened after, I don't know how long it took us, but it was funny because my niece, we had my daughter's oldest daughter, Renee, with us. And she was about maybe 3 or 4, and she got sick and she threw up in the chicken.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So then we couldn't eat the chicken anymore. So the last couple of days, my brother bought us food or whatever, but that was quite a trip.
That's amazing that is so vivid in your mind so long ago that happened.
Yes.
So was that the first time that you left the state of Louisiana?
That was the very first time I left the state of Louisiana, yes.
So that must have been very exciting, taking that long 2-3 day trip across the West to get to California.
Yeah, it really was. It was exciting knowing that I was going to be in California. Mostly, not so much being in California, but being reunited with my family, because we'd all been together before, so we want to be all together again.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, one part that I didn't ask you about is your siblings. Where in the ranking did you fall, and how many siblings did you have?
Okay, there was my mom and dad. My dad was an only child, so that was great. And my mom was, she had like 5 sisters and 2 brothers, so that's them. They met in New Orleans, they got married. And they had my brother Charles first, who's the oldest, and my sister Patricia, brother Willie, and me, and Barbara. So there was 5 of us, 3 girls and 2 boys. The 2 boys have passed away, and the 3 girls are here and thriving.
Okay, my condolences for your loss.
Mm-hmm.
So you were pretty much the second to the last.
I was
or
the fourth
second to
child,
the last kid.
Yeah.
So not quite the baby of the bunch anymore.
Not quite the baby. No, one baby under me. That's Barbara.
So you were the Marlon Jackson of the family.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I guess you could say that. Yeah.
Not quite Michael, but you were Marlon, right?
But we didn't sing or dance, no. Yeah.
Okay, so we get to the big city, right? And it's thriving, and correct me if I'm wrong, in this era we're talking, you said 58, there's a lot of black people migrating to Oakland and places that your family went to. There's a lot of things going on. Tell me from what you can remember, and I know you were still very young, what did you hear your parents talk about in terms of jobs and opportunity, and what was going on that got so many black people to California?
Well, I can speak for my parents. I don't know about generally, but my parents. First of all, my parents had grade school education, both of them, but they were very enthusiastic about life, about getting somewhere in life, about caring for the family. So I was always very impressed with them. They had no real education, but they were very intelligent, very knowledgeable, very wise people. So they didn't have a problem. My dad didn't have a problem getting a job. So as soon as he got here, he found a job, and within a year, less than a year, he started working at the Long Beach airport, way back in those days. And I thought it was so funny because even then, when he was working at the Long Beach airport, he had flight benefits. And they got to go to flew, that when it was doing planes to Catalina Island. So I remember him and my mom, they got a free trip to Catalina Island back in those days. So yeah, they didn't have any problem adjusting to life from Louisiana to New Orleans. And then in less than a year, or a year maybe, they were able to buy a home in Long Beach.
And you meant from Louisiana to California?
To California.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's amazing to put it in context, to think that brother was getting benefits at the job in 58, 59. That's amazing.
Yeah,
to think
flight
about
benefits.
That.
I thought that was funny because I've been living off of flight benefits ever since.
So the airline was the place that a lot of people, that was the buzz back then for opportunities.
Yeah, well, for him it was. Yes.
Yeah.
My aunt who was here, she was doing domestic work. My mom did domestic work for a short period of time. But then there was a hospital in Long Beach, and a lot of the men in my family, it was a county hospital. And back then it was the tuberculosis or something like that hospital. And a lot of the men worked at that hospital. They hired a lot of men at the hospital.
So there were places to work.
There was, yes.
That's amazing.
For the people that was in my life, they were all working.
Yes. Now, what did your parents do in Louisiana before? I know we're going back a little bit, but just for context, what did your parents do back in Louisiana?
My mom was basically a housewife. She just took care of us. And my dad, he was not a bus driver, a truck driver.
Okay.
Yeah, and at one point he had his own truck that he was transporting things and that kind of thing. Again, I was young, I don't really know, but yeah. As I recall, he was a truck driver.
Okay, great. So now you're in California, and you are experiencing a new way of life. What was it like for you as a young teenager leaving Louisiana and making friends and things like that?
Well, it was easy to make friends. I made friends easily, but for the very first time, I was in junior high school, and for the first time I was going to integrated school. When I left Louisiana, it was still segregated. I think the year we left, they integrated things, and that was unimaginable to me. I mean, the way it was before, but now everything's integrated by passing a law. But my experience of an integration situation was when I went to junior high school. And there was actually no problems. You know, the kids were just kids.
So were you, did you feel anxiety or apprehension or fear? What were your feelings like coming from the South and having, you know, that segregation background, and now you're, you know, I understand that you had an insulated family, so it's kind of unique from a lot of other people, right? Well, I won't say a lot, because I'm sure there were a lot of rural people back then that did that, but you know, I mean, you weren't in integrated schools in Louisiana. So did you have how did you feel about that?
I actually did not really think about it. You know, it's like when you're doing something, you're just doing it. You know, I have to go to school, so I'm going to school. I didn't think about it. And then the kids were just being kids. The other issue there is, again, there were black kids already in school who had already been doing this, so they sort of set the standard. You know, it's like the door was already open. It was already set in place. It wasn't like I had to.
You weren't integrating any schools. You weren't the first kid.
Exactly.
Going there.
It was already. By the time I got there, it was already done.
Right.
So as long as I was with the other black kids, you know, white kids knew how to stay in their lane. So everything was, you know, everything was fine. My experience though was with the teachers. You know, the teachers always try to do what they can to project their racism on you. For example, I remember it was career planning day, and I said I wanted to be a flight attendant. And the teacher says, "Oh, you can't be a flight attendant. You can't be a flight attendant. You know," she didn't say because I was black, or maybe she even did say that, I don't remember, but that was the reason why I could not be a flight attendant. You can't do that. You have to pick another career. Try to be a teacher. So I knew what it was about even then, you know when they
to discourage you and put those barriers in front of you. I'm reminded of Malcolm X had a story of where a teacher told him he could just be a carpenter. You know, so these people who are there to cultivate you are pretty much discouraging
you and putting you in a box where they think you should be.
In the context of what's happening in the world, right?
But I've always had an inner knowingness that, because again, the rumors, the news, the media would say all these things about black people. You know, black people are lazy, black people are drugs there, but I always had an inner knowingness that none of that was true about me. You know, that may be so, but it is for some people. But I'm not less than anyone. I've always known that, and that was also my approach when I went to, like I said, the integrated school for the first time. It didn't matter that who they were. I was still me, and I was as good as you or anybody else in my mind, in my knowingness.
So was that something that was instilled in you by your parents? It sounds like your father was hardworking and industrious.
Very much, yeah. Oh. Yeah, I think so. It has something to do with my self-confidence, the family background that I had. Yeah, that I was as good as anyone else, no matter what the projection was. It never. And the other thing is, which was big in New Orleans, is colorism. They call it colorism today.
Oh, yeah.
Where the lighter-skinned people were supposed to be better than the darker-skinned people, and I never experienced that. It was there, but I didn't fall into that. Yeah. Again, I don't care what color you are, I'm as good or better. So that never affected me personally, because You may think so, but I don't agree. You know.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So now you're there. You're a teenager. You're going through your what I would say is your middle and high school years. What was life for you in high school? What did you do?
Oh, in high school, it was fun. I was an average student. I didn't like school. I remember sitting my dad down one time. I said, "Dad, we need to have a serious talk." I says, "I don't want to go to school. I need to quit school." And he goes, "And do what?" I said, "I don't know, but I don't want to go to school." Well, I don't remember what he said, but I know I had to go to school the next day.
You went the next day.
And continued on until I finished school. So
he heard you out, but then
yeah.
he heard you out, then told you, okay, you can get up in the morning.
You're going to school. You're going to go to school, no matter. And I did, and high school turned out to be fun. One of the things I did in high school is I joined the drill team. We were called the Polyettes. So we would dance and march and that type of thing at all the football games, and that was a lot of fun.
So you were really active in high school?
Yeah, we also had a sorority in high school with the black sisters, and I joined that, and we did a lot of fun things there as well. So as it turns out, there was a lot of activities and friends around me that allowed me to enjoy school after all.